Hello, Bullpup family. I want to come to you today with the second of our February Bullpup briefs regarding the Gannon case, which specifically deals with school funding. As a reminder, Bullpup briefs are an opportunity to talk about district updates, achievement, areas of growth, future plans, and in the case of this one, directly derived from a question from a community member. As always, we have released our school app. If you have an iDevice, you can simply search for Caney Valley Schools and that will pop up. So make sure you take the time to do that. I like to begin these with a reminder of those that came out in December. But let's get into a brief discussion of checks and balances before we get into the Gannon case, because this is very, very important. We know, as all of us have been taught who went through public school systems, that there is a system of checks and balances so that one branch of the government cannot become too powerful. If you look in the lower right-hand corner with the judicial branch, one of the things that it does on the green line is to determine whether laws are constitutional. That is exactly what we're dealing with the Gannon case, and we'll be talking about that. What's important to note from the Supreme Court itself is that the burden of essentially creating an equitable and adequate school funding proposal is on the legislature. And they say the legislature's chosen path during the 2016 session will ultimately determine whether Kansas students will be treated fairly and the schoolhouse doors will be open to them in August for the beginning of the 2016-2017 school year. And when they talk about that and they state that, it's very true, because if the legislature does not meet their burden, then simply put, skipping forward to the end, school doors would be closed on June 30th of this year. So how did we get here? A brief history. Simply put, Senate Bill 7, commonly referred to as the block grant, was passed. During this time, a contingent of individuals of school systems filed a motion seeking essentially to say that Senate Bill 7 was unconstitutional. The lower court, three-judge panel, ruled that it was, and that they immediately needed to pay $50 million to schools, essentially in two areas, with our local option budget and capital outlay. This was the equalization part, and we'll talk about that in a moment. They did understand, because of the late ruling on it, and you can see there that was June 26th of last year, that it would be nearly impossible for them to complete their task in a few days before the legislature closed. Because of that, they issued a stay, essentially saying that they ruled that it was unconstitutional, but that they had some time to figure it out. Arguments were held, and it was taken to the Supreme Court. What we did find out from the Supreme Court of Kansas is that they did not meet its burden to show that their current funding system was meeting our needs here in Kansas. Simply put, and they reminded, the courts are endowed with remedial powers to enforce their holdings. In other words, it is their job, it is their duty to determine whether laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. What they ordered, essentially, was that they had until June 30th of this year to find an equitable school finance system. And again, this portion of the ruling deals with equity. The court did not determine or touch the adequacy portion. Adequacy simply meaning, are we providing adequate funds or appropriate funds in order to educate the children here in Kansas? Equity simply is the process of ensuring that poor districts such as Caney Valley have support, and in order to maintain similar systems, educational systems, experiences, opportunities that are granted to districts in other areas that are much richer. This decision, again, only deals with equity. And what we know is that for right now, everything stays the same. As far as we are still on the block grant, we will still, in theory, see the same money that is supposed to have come to us this year. And we won't have any ruling later on until the legislature basically determines how they would like to approach school funding. What's interesting to note is the court was very clear is that the previous school finance formula that had been in place for many, many years was not only adequate, it was also equitable, but the caveat was when it was actually fully funded. That had not taken place in many, many years. You may remember it was a few years back that the legislature attempted to fully fund this, only to go back on their word and pull funds later on. This has been something that schools have become used to, and it's unfortunate. I look at it the same way as many families would when they begin to budget at the beginning of a month. For the most part, if we just look and break it down at a week, if I were to give you $20 at the beginning of the week and to tell you that you were going to need to eat for the entire week off of that $20, you would begin to budget and find a way to make that happen. If I came to you on Thursday or Friday and I said I need $3 of that back, it would be nearly impossible for you to eat those final few days, or in some cases you may not have that money. Schools have been in that same situation for many, many years. We do a wonderful job of budgeting and taking our time to ensure that we have appropriate operations and educational opportunities within our district. But time and time again, at the end of the session, we are often cut and not given monies that we were budgeting and counting on in order to maintain services for our students. Again, this is all about equity, which is often confused with equality. On the left, you can see a standard representation of what equality is. Everybody receives the same. Simply put, equity ensures that we all have the same opportunity to be successful. Districts that are poor, such as Caney Valley and others in southeast Kansas, rely on the equity portion of the school finance formula to ensure that we can put on programs, opportunity, and educational experiences that put us on a level playing field with many of the richer districts around the state. I'd like to close by reminding you, as always, our goal is always building up lifelong passion under proven success. That's what a bullpup simply is. But what we know is that without adequate or equitable funding, it's very difficult for us to maintain the level of educational opportunities and excellence that Caney Valley has been known for without that support. It's important to note that at this time, the courts are not telling the legislature what to do or how to do it, but they are simply letting them know that the current formula that they have in existence is unconstitutional. Again, that's how I began this presentation, with a brief overview. That is what a court does. That is what the Supreme Court decides, whether laws are constitutional or unconstitutional. Because of the determination that the current funding is unconstitutional and the deadline of June 30th, that would essentially mean that if nothing were done, that the law would be declared unconstitutional, null and void, and we would have no way to fund our schools. With no way to fund our schools, there's no way to get money to us in order to operate. And with no way to operate, simply put, as they said, schools would be closed around the entire state. I urge you to contact your representatives and to let them know that as individuals here in Caney Valley Schools, that we have to find a way to adequately and equitably fund schools for the benefit of all of our students. My biggest fear is that in an election year, that we will not take the time to determine and make decisions that are best for our students, and that quite possibly school doors could be closed on June 30th. The ball is in the legislature's court, and we can only hope that they make the correct decision. As always, if there are questions, thoughts, or concerns regarding this, please feel free to reach out. You can reach me at any of the information on this slide, including the 2 social media sites through Twitter or Facebook. I appreciate those who have approached me regarding these. If you have any further questions or a need for information, I'm always available, and I appreciate your support. In closing, I would like to personally thank the representatives of this community, the Board of Education, for extending my contract. Nothing pleases me more for the opportunity to lead this school district for another year, and I look forward to many more to come. Thank you again, and have a great day, Bullpups.